Welcome back. So in part one, we talked about the best workout for Ironman, which was actually 4 workouts combined into a single event that ultimately you were going to drop into a 24-hour period. And then in part 2, we talked about placing those race simulation events as well as supporting training camps, races, how to lay out that specific preparation period for you. So today what I want to do is talk about workouts, specifically the workouts that you want to be building towards to enable you to complete those race simulation events. And if you give yourself a lot of runway, this is what your general preparation, your base training is going to be building towards. Now these come from part 2 of Gordo's Guide to Going Long that's linked up on the Endurance Essentials website. So swim, bike, run. Let's kick off with the swim. I'll slide down a bit. There's really 2 sessions that I think are essential for you. The first is really simple, and that is a 4,000 meter swim where you don't stop. So you want to build your capacity to do the swim, a little more than the swim, without stopping. And you can build that in the pool and then test it in open water, ideally with your wetsuit if you're doing a wetsuit swim. And you want to do that several times, at least 3 open water swims, 4,000 meters without stopping before your event. And you're going to notice when you get out of the pool and into open water that it's really different. All those little push-offs give you quite a bit of rest that you might not be aware of. And that continuous pressure in the water and the continuous pressure all day of an Ironman is something you got to get used to. Now, benchmark swim. I use this with everybody, and it's 5 by 1,000. And the idea is to train and to prove to yourself how much you're going to need to hold back in the swim so you don't disrupt the first part of your bike and so you don't waste a lot of energy in the first part of your day, which is really a small part of the overall event. So 5 1,000s, you can do this in the pool or to prepare, and then you can get out in the open water, and it's great. We have a looped course on the Boulder Reservoir, which is about 1,000 meters. And we can get out there and do this workout. So first lap, and what you want to do is you want to get split data for yourself so you can calculate pace and ideally some heart rate data as well so that you can see pace versus effort and pace versus effort and heart rate combined. First lap, easy, zone 1. Second lap, steady. Third lap, tempo. And then I want you to try and swim strong on the 4th lap and then back off to steady again for the 5th lap. And why are we doing 5,000? We're doing 5,000 because on race day, you're going to need to ride 180K and then run a marathon. So it's an over distance swim to really drive home what's going to happen in terms of your swim endurance and test it. Now, what you're probably going to find is that steady effort, that kind of relaxed effort that you do on the second loop is probably going to be the way to play it in terms of the overall event. But I'll let you decide that for yourself because different athletes, we all have different levels of swim fitness. I get a bit more into it in the article, but that's the key point I wanted to make in the video. Now, the bike. Key thing about the bike, it's where you want to be putting the bulk of your energy. Your training mojo should be building up your cycling capacity and your ability to make that Ironman ride as manageable and as routine as possible. And that's a big ask because it's a long way to ride. Now, I give you a case study in the article, which basically says, hey, pull up your rides, your longest rides, and maybe you take your 10 longest rides from your prior season. And ideally, you'll have kilojoules in terms of the work that you did on each of those rides. And rank them. Just lay them out from biggest kilojoule ride to smallest in the top 10. And then have a look at where your Ironman is going to fit into that. So let me slide down and show you that. For me, it's I pulled out all my key rides. There they are. So from May to July, and I ranked them. My biggest was 160% of an Ironman bike. And so I had 3 rides that were kind of more over distance rides. Ideally, if I was getting ready for an Ironman, I would have more than that. I wasn't in shape to run a marathon with just 3 rides that were over distance rides. That's going to need to be a key focus of mine. Also in the article is a case study using bestbikesplit.com to help figure out how much energy you're likely to go through based on your Ironman event and the course and your kind of profile and your position in that. All you really need to do is get a rough idea, because if this ride is going to be way higher than your typical ride, well, that points to very conservative pacing on race day, particularly with any surges, and you're just going to really have to dial it down so that you don't run out of energy when you get to the run. The other thing is, where should you be focusing the ride? Well, you're going to need to build up the ability to do that amount of mechanical work on the bike, but the bike is also a great place to build up your work capacity for the overall event. So that's why I was encouraging you to do those bike-focused training camps to get the body used to putting out energy first day after day, and eventually into a big day, and eventually into the Ironman race with the cycling. Now, on to the run. For the run, the key point that I want you to focus on is the reality that your easy pace, the pace, if you go out fresh and just run an easy run for an hour, that's likely to be your Ironman race case. And until you've proven the ability to do that in an Ironman, I would assume that's the case. And that has some really important implications for your run training. So anytime you're going quicker than that easy pace, you're doing speed work in an Ironman sense. And it also means that you need to be quite careful with building fitness, run fitness, that you're not going to be able to use. Why is that? Because if you're generating a lot of fatigue with challenging run sessions, that is energy that's not going to be available to do bike sessions. And the bike sessions are so fundamental to your success, you really need to focus on them. And by bike sessions, I mean, number one, green zone endurance. And then the other 2 things in terms of harder cycling, it's tempo and torque. And what I mean by that, we explain it in our cycling chapter. Torque would be like big gear work, lower cadence, specific strength training on the bike. And tempo is just working on those intermediate fibers, kind of a little bit of zone 3 work. You're usually going to be doing that when you're climbing, but longer climbs, not really intense climbs, where that effort is maybe coming up into, say, 70.3 type effort, not doing a whole bunch of really hard cycling. And with the run, it's even more moderate, because you need to remember easy pace is race pace until you prove otherwise. Okay, so that's a few focuses: swim, bike, and run, for you to think about when you're building up those key workouts. And remember, the most important days are the long days, but the most important thing overall is that consistent volume, specifically consistent cycling volume, week in, week out, with short overload periods, bike focused, to help you lift and gradually build yourself to a higher level. Thanks for listening. I've got a series coming out on targeting green zone cycling. It's going to drop last Monday in January 2025, if you're coming to this video later. I think it'll really help you. So if you listen to this video, you want to understand more about how to target these green zone efforts, check that out on the site. Subscribe, and you'll be able to get all the future videos too. Thanks for listening.